I'd campaigned on behalf of Federation for a number of years. Never getting too deeply involved, always being very careful that I didn't get too deeply involved. And one day I was visited by Susan Tick and Dina Wachtel. Anybody that's ever met either of those two women know that when they walk into your office, I don't know how or when or why, but you're going to lose. You're going to do something you don't want to do, and you're going to feel good about it at the time. And so they walked in and they said that they would like me to consider chairing a division of the campaign. And I said, well, let me think about it, you know. And you know how some things are beschert? The next week, I was flying back from Calgary, and I get on the plane, and in the seat next to me is Mark James. And we get talking, and he says, you know, I was visited by Susan and Dina last week. I said, you too? He said, yes, and they want me to head up a division in the campaign. I said, funny. That's exactly what they asked me to do. So we sat there. We looked at each other and said, you know, why don't we do this together? And so we did. And we organized it as we would organize either of our businesses. Had a meeting before we started the campaign with all of our campaigners, all of our the members of our committee, and we said, look, what are we going to do? And they said, well, what are you talking about? What are you going to do? He says, how much are we going to increase the donations of the people that we've been charged with caring for? And there still wasn't a lot of understanding. And so we said, look, I'm not going to go into this thing to do the same as somebody did last year, like it's a job, okay? And I don't think any of you want to do a job. You would like to make a contribution, but you don't just want to repeat what somebody did last year and make a bunch of phone calls. You're better than that, so what do we want to increase our division by this campaign? We had a thought that maybe 20% would be a nice number. The group came back and said 25 would be good, so let's go for 30. Okay? That way so we said, how about we round it off at a third? And so we did what we did. We asked everybody to go up by 33% over last year. And we made our goal. We actually increased, I think, about 26 or 27% over the previous year. There's no good deed that ever goes unpunished, I want you to know, especially not within our community. So the following year, Gary Averbach took over the campaign and called Mark and I and said, would we like to move up to being in charge of men's philanthropy, which is everything male in the campaign except major donors. He said, I'm going to focus on major donors. I would like you and Mark to handle all of the men's campaigns. So pick the chairs for the individual divisions, make sure they get canvassers, all of that. And it felt so good to do what we had done the last year. We both said yes. And now we were head of men's philanthropy for the CJA campaign, which gave us, or for the Federation campaign, which gave us a seat at the cabinet table. And it just built from that. I mean, we went to the cabinet table, we talked about how good it had felt to increase. We talked about the real problem that the campaign had, in that for a dozen years, it pretty much had stayed in the same range. In spite of the fact that we had increased, the overall campaign still languished somewhere between $4 and $5 million. And the fact that it had stayed pretty much in that range for 12 years was very, very unsettling, especially to Mark and I, because it's no secret that if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, you're declining. And so we set about to do some research and figure out what we thought was wrong with the campaign and why it was languishing. So we decided that what we had to do was insist on canvassers coming to canvasser training. We would provide enough dates and times where we would do canvasser training, where we would educate them as to what the needs were now, what the campaign needed now, and why it was critical that we got increases in the campaign, that we found new donors, that we found new reasons why existing donors could step up, all right? Because they had become used to saying, same again, let's do that one more time. I had an okay year, I can afford it, I'll do it again. That's the death knell, because if inflation were the only thing to consider, you'd be going backwards. But the needs change, and they don't change in increments. If all of a sudden, as we are now deciding that we must expand the reach of Federation broader, the reach of our Jewish community broader throughout the Lower Mainland, throughout the Fraser Valley, because the Jews that can afford to live up the valley don't have the services that the Jews that can afford to live in Vancouver have. And so we've got a new vision for the campaign. Well, that vision isn't just 2% more than what we raised last year. It might be 10, it might be 15, it might be 20%. We have to have the ability to explain that to people and go get it. Nothing happens overnight. But Mark and I came on the campaign cabinet in Mitchell Groper's year, when Mitchell Groper chaired it for 2002, 2003. We started to see movement, positive movement. There was growth. When I got into the chair in 2004, we just kept on pushing for that growth. We had new canvassers who understood that face-to-face canvassing was a better way to do it and were willing to do it. We had new canvassers who were walking in and asking for increases and saying, listen, you've been a great supporter of the campaign. The campaign needs you, and we need you to tell us who else we should be talking to, and we need you to come to the party. And this year our goal is a 10% increase, and we need you to go to 15 because not everybody can afford to go to 10. And just ask them those kind of questions. If we ask them those kind of questions, ask them to make increases, we were amazed. It was quite possible that the people would do it. And so the campaign grew to 5 million, 6 million, 7 million during that period of time. And now it had momentum. Now the common thinking was, we can make the campaign bigger. As the community's needs grow, as the JCC gets more members that need subsidy, as the Talmud Torah starts to grow and needs more support in order to be able to offer an egalitarian tuition system, as those things happen and Federation is stuck at the same amount of money, all of those organizations start to look for other sources of income. And so development becomes part of the mantra of the major organizations. So the Jewish Family Services, so the Talmud Torah, and others. And I don't mean to single those out for any specific reason, but they start doing their own development work. Now the combined Federation campaign is becoming one of the campaigns that we have going out in our community. And the idea of a consolidated single campaign is being undone by the needs of these organizations. The challenge for us was that after 12 years of stagnant campaigns, modest increases, so then it falls back the next year, it became absolutely critical that the campaigns get moving. And thank goodness at the same time, Mark Gervis joined the Federation as our CEO. He opened the channels and bought in fully in the fact that this community could raise more funds. And there were years when I was campaign chair that we were one of the leading federations in North America in terms of campaign growth. And that was because Mark believed we could do this and helped us all find a way. It was exceptional. We were honored at the GA in Toronto with an award from Federations North America for our ability to grow our community and grow our campaign and grow our funding at a time that others were taking 4% and 5% reductions. So much of it depends on the psyche of the campaign, and so much depends on the psyche of the person that's canvassing someone, that we can do these things. There's a story about a West Point class in military strategy. And the major that's giving the class says, well, we've covered everything that we were supposed to cover in the class, so we've looked at many, many different battles and other things. Is there any questions, anything that you aren't sure of or you want me to go over before we wind up? And a hand goes up, and he says, yes, sir. He said, Major, you haven't talked about the Six-Day War and Israel's War of Independence. And while they were not by this, in terms of the number of people involved, they were significant battles. And could you explain that to me? And he said, son, this is a course in military strategy, not divine providence. The thing about Israel was they didn't know they could fail. They believed that they had to be successful. If you can approach a campaign on that basis, if you could believe that you will be successful, if you know you cannot fail, you got a better chance of succeeding. So that would be the first thing, is just how much the campaign now is spread over a number of demographics that weren't there before, ages that we didn't have before. There are areas that Federation has moved into in terms of finding solutions for things. Housing was not on the radar when I was involved with Federation. It wasn't something we could contemplate. If you can't get over $5 million, how can you contemplate being able to, I mean, it's not that Federation does it, but Federation becomes a worthwhile resource for people who see these problems, have the wherewithal, they can believe that Federation can manage the development of these kinds of things for the community. When Federation can't get their campaign, obviously the years of good management that Ezra and Mark before him have given Federation has allowed people to trust Federation more as a reliable partner in this area. Our Federation is deeper into Etzbah HaGalil, and many more worthwhile endeavors in the Metula area in northern Israel. And I think, lastly, the difference is the can-do attitude that the campaign has. It sets a goal, and it achieves it. It achieves an increase. And we said that this could be a $10 million campaign. It's going to get there. It's very close. And it just needs a little push, but it's going to be a $10 million campaign. And that's not happening elsewhere in North America. There's no other place in the Jewish community of Vancouver where all the needs of the community intersect. So you can, as an individual, go talk to Talmud Torah, go talk to Richmond Jewish Day School. You can go talk to Shalchevet. You can go talk to Hebrew Academy and make a decision about where to put your dollars in the community education purse. And you can go talk to people who are dealing with homelessness, dealing with the food bank, supporting the food bank, supporting the social needs of our community, and make a decision on how to take that piece. You can do all of these things yourself if you want to, but there's no area where they all intersect like Federation. And Federation has a process supported by thoughtful, intelligent members of our community who analyze all of these needs, set some priorities for the community, and fund on that basis. So we've got a community that's growing, we've got a community that's healthy, we've got a community that's achieving some of the goals and aims I think we all want as, part of our tikkun olam portion of our lives. I think Federation makes that happen. Without Federation, what are we? People should give to Federation because Federation's job is to determine the needs of the community, to prioritize them, and then to fund them as best it can. And if it can't fund them completely, to help the organization find other funding. That's what Federation does. It's not a job for us as donors. As donors, we write checks. There's a story about a rabbi who's finishing up at the end of Yom Kippur. And he's putting away his talis, he's taking off his kittel, and he looks out, and here's Max Feldbaum davening. Max is a very wealthy member of the congregation, but religious, not so much. So he walks down and he says, Max, aren't you hungry? He said, I am, Rabbi, but you reached me this year. You really reached me. And I want to stay here. I want to say some Tehillim. I am going to, read a few verses of Pirkei Avot before I go home. He says, Max, each of us has our responsibilities. Go home. Your responsibility is to make money so you can give it to me, so I can distribute it. My responsibility is the religious, the spiritual health of the community. You do your job and I'll do mine. Go home. It's the same thing. Federation's job is to take care of our charitable needs in the community. That's why I think it needs to be here.